This is the IOA Podcast, a space for truth, tenderness, and becoming whole, one breath at a time. Welcome back, everyone, to the IOA Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Malaika, and this is a space where we heal loudly and we live softly. If you're new here, come on in, find a seat. There's room for you at this table. And if you have been walking through this season with me week after week, thank you for keeping me company. I do not take it lightly that you keep returning to this quiet corner of a very, very loud world. Before we begin, I want to do a little bit of housekeeping because this community keeps growing and I want to keep building it with intention. If this show has met you somewhere, I have 3 quick asks that I ask every week. First, follow and subscribe wherever you are listening, whether this is Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, YouTube, or anywhere else that podcasts live. Following really is the single most powerful thing that you can do to help this work reach the people who need it. Second, if you are an Apple Podcast, I want you to leave a 5-star review with one honest sentence because reviews help new listeners decide that they should trust us with their time. And third, share with someone who used to make things and somewhere along the way, they kind of stopped. That is the community care in action. All of our platforms are always linked in the show notes. Remember that the Substack companion to this episode is live and our paid subscribers have a guided making practice waiting this week, and you'll understand what that means shortly. One that goes deeper than we can go here on this show. I tell you more about that when we get to the close of the show. All right, so let's get into it because this one has been forming in me for a while, and I have a feeling that it's going to meet some of you exactly where you are. And so I want us to get into the opening framing of this particular episode. So this is episode 38, and we're talking about creativity, calling, and the healing power of making something new. And so I want to begin with a question, and I want you to notice, honestly, what happens in your body when you hear it. When was the last time you made something, anything at all, just because you wanted to? Not for work, not for a client, not for the algorithm, not for a caption. You're not trying to sell it, trying to prove anything to anyone, just something that you made with your own hands, your own voice, for the simple, ancient reason that a human being wanted to make a thing. For a lot of you, I think that question probably landed with a little bit of an ache because you cannot remember the last time that you've actually done this. It's been a long time. Somewhere along the way, making something became one more thing you were supposed to be good at or monetize or post. And so over time, you quietly just stopped. I want to name the moment that we are living in because it is part of why so many of us have gone quiet in this particular way. We're living through a season where human making feels to a lot of people to be pointless. You can type a sentence into a program and it will hand you a poem or describe a picture and it will paint you one in seconds. But the real and serious conversations happening about authorship and copyright and authenticity, about who made it and whether it matters, and underneath all of that, there's this feeling that I feel like a lot of us are carrying right now that we're not quite saying out loud. And what we're basically holding on to is, why would I even bother? Why struggle to write this imperfect thing when I can put it into AI, which it can produce something cleaner and faster before I even have time to find my pen? I want to be careful here because, again, I do not want to come across as if I'm going to spend this entire episode telling you that technology is the enemy. You all know I'm a psychologist, I'm a researcher, and so I know that technology is important for what we do. I'm not a machine breaker. That's not what I'm here to do. Those tools are genuinely remarkable. I use them. I'm not interested in shaming you if you do use them, but I want us to notice something together today, something easy that we miss in all the noise about who can make things and who can give a better output. We have started to talk about creativity as if it's the only thing that matters is the product, as if the whole point of making a thing is the thing that you end up with. And in that story, of course, AI wins because it can generate output all day long over and over and over again. But here's what I want to say to you, and I want it to be clear right at the top of this show. The healing of making something is not in the product, it's in the actual process of making. And that is the part that actually heals you. It cannot be outsourced to anyone or anything, no matter how advanced or clever the tool may be. So, this episode is for the one who used to make things and then they just stopped. It's for the one who has told themselves for years some version of I am just not a creative person, right? As if creativity were some kind of club that you had to get into. It's for the ones that didn't realize that they had a real gift, and it's not about monetizing it or a job, but it's about the joy that comes from just making something from nothing. And that is what we are trying to do here. And so we've looked at the landscape of how people have tried to monetize it. We've looked at, the thing that used to bring us joy is now just another thing that causes stress. We've looked at the fact that joy has quietly died somewhere in the invoicing of things and the output. If any part of this is you, I want you to settle in. This one is for you. Today, we are going to walk through four things. One, the psychology of making. And I think that this is important to understand what that looks like. What happens in the body and the mind when we are creating things and why we tend to abandon it. Two, the myth that creativity has to be good or original or productive or monetizable to count. And the fear that AI and machines and computers have made our making of things pointless. Three, what our people have always known about creativity, because making beauty is one of the oldest forms of survival and resistance that we have as a people. And four, what it looks like to practice, to actually make something this week with our eye of pause as the way we arrive at the making instead of performing it. This is not an episode about becoming a professional artist, so I can't help you there. I am not here to add one more hustle to your life because I am not for that. This is root system work. We're doing the quiet, slow reclaiming of a birthright that productivity culture and comparison and monetizing and now the machines have all quietly talked you out of. This is the birthright of making something for no reason at all, just simply because you are alive. So let's begin the work. We're going to take a break and we'll be back in just a second. So I want to start where I always start every episode, in the body, because if you've been around long enough, we tend to talk about creativity as if it only lives in our mind, like it's some airy thing that belongs to artists and children. But making something is a deeply embodied event, and your nervous system knows it, even when your calendar can not remember it or has forgotten. So I want to demystify something because there is really a psychological underframing for what we casually call creativity. You have probably heard the word flow. Any of my psychology students have definitely heard this. It points to something real, a state that researchers who study attention have described for decades. Flow is what happens when you are absorbed in the making of something, that the usual chatter goes quiet, the things around you are just almost oblivious. The self monitoring drops away, the clock disappears. Your whole attention has been gathered up into the thing that's in front of you or the thing that you are doing. And here is what I want you to notice. Flow is one of the few states in modern life where the anxious, self surveilling part of the mind finally gets a rest. Not because you numbed it, but because you gave it something worthy to do. There's a whole tradition in psychology, a very well established one, around what we might call expressive or therapeutic writing. And there's art therapy more broadly. I will not pretend to cite you like a specific study from memory because I want to be honest with you rather than impressive. But the tradition is real, it is old. And the through line that I think exists is this: when we make something out of what we feel, when we take the grief or the fear or the joy that is stuck inside us and we move it into words or into color or a substance like clay or a song, something in us shifts. The feeling that we were going through stops circulating silently in our body and it starts to move. It makes things like making things is one of the ways that stuck emotions inside of us actually finds a way to get out. Think about why a child would draw scary things after they have a hard day. Think about why grief so often reaches for a song. Think about why people in the worst seasons of their life so often start almost without deciding to do it. They write things down. It is not decoration. What it is almost like a form of metabolism. We are creatures who process our inner lives by making them into something that we can see, we can hold, and we can look at from the outside. And I want to say a word about play because we treat it like it's optional, like it's what you do after the real work is done. But play is not a luxury for the nervous system, it is actually a need. Watch any child, and you will see that play is how their young species learns how to regulate, come back to themselves, and do the things that they need to do to calm down. That capacity does not vanish just simply because we turn some arbitrary age. We just get talked out of it. We are told that making things with no purpose is a waste of time, that a grown woman, a grown man should have outgrown all of these things. And so we amputate, I feel like, one of the most regulating things a human being can actually do. And then we wonder why we are so brittle or we feel so emotionally off. If making is this good for us, this regulating and this healing, why do we abandon it? And so many of us do. So I want to name 3 reasons that I think possibly explains this because I think naming things kind of loosens its grip on us. The first is productivity culture, and I've talked about this a lot. Somewhere along the way, we have absorbed the belief that our worth is our output and that our activity or any activity we do that does not produce something useful, marketable, or improving is a waste of our time. Making a thing just for the joy of it does not fit anywhere in that leisure. And so it gets cut first. It feels indulgent. It feels like something you have to earn after everything else is done, which of course means it will never happen because it is never all done. The second, I think, is comparison. That is one of the louder things now than it has ever been before because we make a thing and then the first thing we do in the same breath is hold it up against every other version of that thing that has ever been made. All of them curated and gleaming on our screen. And if we're being honest, we don't see the clumsy, honest first attempt that that person does. It cannot survive comparison. So we conclude that we have no business making anything at all. We kill the seedling by holding it next to the full grown tree. And then the third reason I think is the tenderest one is the fear of being bad at all. We are so unaccustomed as adults to being beginners at things. We spend our whole lives becoming competent. We create a version of self that has it all together, and the beginner's clumsiness of making something new is genuinely uncomfortable for our nervous system that has now organized itself around looking capable. To make something, especially at first, you have to be willing to make it badly. And a lot of us would rather not make it at all than make it badly. And so, because of that, we just don't. I have worked with people in the past, and I've had to change the details for the course for privacy. But they came to me at a very low, flat time of their life where they had this kind of sadness that they could not name. Nothing was wrong on paper. As we were talking through things, one of the things that kind of surfaced kept coming up consistently. This person used to paint since they were young. just for the pleasure of doing it. It was something they enjoyed. And I asked them, gently, when did they stop doing it? When I asked that question, they got very quiet. And then there was a surety that I could see happening with them. They stopped around the time that they started selling their work because everyone told them they were good. And so, because you're good, the assumption is that you should sell it. Within a year or two, the painting now became inventory, the painting became a task. Every canvas was now a product. Every hour with the brush had to be justified. And then one day, they just couldn't do it anymore. The joy had quietly left the room, and they hadn't even noticed when it actually happened. So we didn't really talk through it that day. We didn't go through everything. We talked about what it felt like to go back to that younger version who used to paint because color made them happy. And then the work, the slow work, was helping them find their way back to that version of themselves, back to making the thing that didn't have to be sold, didn't have to be good, didn't even have to be seen. It was no longer about the business. Save the maker, not the business. In the language from my book, Rooted in Resilience, A Journey to Collective Healing, this is the chapter on the voice, because your creativity is not some kind of party trick to dazzle people or a side hustle. It is the sound of your own inner voice being made audible to others. When you make something that's honest, you're not performing, you are speaking in whatever language is truest to you, whether it's words or colors or music or movement or the particular way you arrange a room. Because, yes, interior design is creativity, or it could be the way you make food or how you garden. And when you stop making, something inside of you goes quiet that was never meant to be silent. The work of healing here is partly the work of letting your own voice make sound again that had been muted from before. So we're going to take another break. And when we come back, we are going to talk about the myth of worthy making. And we will be back in just a second. Welcome back, everyone, to the episode. And really quickly, I want to shout out WDJY and the listeners in the city of Atlanta, Georgia. So glad to continue to have this partnership with you and glad to be able to continue on this journey together. So now let's talk about the myth of worthy making. I want to name the issue directly because I feel like it sits underneath everything that we have talked about so far in this episode. And the myth is this: that in order to be worth doing, your making has to be good, has to be original, it has to be productive. And now increasingly, it has to be able to compete. Because if AI can do it faster and cleaner, then what on earth is the point of you doing it at all? So let me take those, apart one at a time, because each one to me is a lie. And each one has stopped a lot of good people from ever picking up the pen or the pan or using their voice. It has to be good. No, it does not have to be good. The idea that you should only make what you can make well is one of the most creative killing ideas ever handed down to a human being. Every person who makes anything well was first a person who made it badly for a long time without an audience there to view it. Skill is what is left behind after a great deal of joyful, unwatched practice. If you refuse to make the bad version, you're never going to get to the good one. And worse, I would say you actually rob yourself of the thing that was healing you the whole time. It was never about the quality, it was always about the making. Here's number two: it has to be original. This one paralyzes the thoughtful ones, especially. The fear that it has all been done, that you have nothing new to add to the ecosystem. But you're not making in order to be the first person to ever have done this or to ever have thought this. You are making it in order to be the first version of you to move through this. Move this feeling through your own hands. There has never been another you. So whatever comes through you, however familiar the form may be, has your particular life in it. Originality is not always the point. In fact, I will say originality is not the point. Presence is the point. It has to be productive. Let me give you an example. We have heard many songs that are amazing be covered by other artists. We know that these songs are not original, but what they are breathing into the song is them, the originality of them. And will never experience another them. And because of that, what they are producing is important. Here is where I want you to understand about productivity culture, because I think this directly connects to this, how it reaches all the way into art. And it kind of demands that even this thing that we produce justify itself. Some of the most important making that you will ever do produces nothing that you will be able to sell, nothing that you'll be able to hang or even show anyone. It produces a calmer nervous system, which is invaluable. It can help you metabolize grief. It produces a self who feels a little more like themselves. Those who are not looking for the outcomes, but you're looking for the fact that the making is the whole point. Making is allowed, honestly, to be its own reward. And we need to get back to that. And then I think that there's this newest sphere, the one that underneath so much of this season, that AI has made human making pointless. I want to speak to this one carefully because I personally take this seriously, and I do not want to hand you something that's a comforting lie. Here's this distinction that I want you to carry out of this episode. AI, a machine, can generate an output. It cannot have the experience of making. It does not have the ability to do that. The experience of making is the entire thing that actually heals you. Sit with that, because I feel like it changes everything. When you sit down to write the poem, even badly, with your grease spilling into it, the value of that hour is not the poem. The value is what happened to you while you wrote it, the feeling that moved through you, the attention that it gathered, the small, quiet becoming that is happening, the way you were a slightly different person when you stood up than when you sat down. A machine can hand you a finished poem in 3 seconds, and you will not be able to change that at all, because you were not there for the only part of the equation that ever mattered, which was the making. The transformation does not live in the artifact. It actually lives in the maker. And that is the one thing that no tool can do for you. No matter how good it gets, no matter how advanced it is, it cannot become you on your behalf. And anyone that uses AI knows this. So here's the reframe that I want to offer for you today. And I want you to actually take this in, because it undoes this whole trap. The value of making is not the market. The value of making is the transformation of you, the maker. You do not make in order to sell. You do not even make in order to be good. You make in order to become. It's the process over the product all day, every day. The thing that you end up holding is just the residue of the real event, which happened inside of you while your hands were busy. And once you truly believe it, the machine stops being a threat. Let it generate its outputs. That was never your job. Your job, and it's sacred and it's irreplaceable, is to be the maker, is to have the experience that the machine can never have, the experience of being changed by what you make. No one can automate your becoming. And so in Rooted in Resilience, I call this chapter the bloom, because a bloom is not efficient. A flower is not a productive use of a plant's resources by any accounting, right? It's the plant's fullest self coming into color for its own sake, because that is what it was always growing toward. It is you coming into color and letting your fullest self become visible, not because necessarily it's useful, but because it will sell, but because a life that never blooms is only one that's ever half lived. You are allowed to come into color, and you creating is how you do that. Remind yourself, you do not have to justify the flower. So let's take another break. When we come back, we're going to get into talking about what we inherited about making. We're going to take a break and we'll be back in just a second. Welcome back, everyone, to the episode, and we are going to get into talking about what we inherited about making. And so I wanted to widen the lens the way we always do on this show, because I don't want you to think of creativity as a hobby. I also don't want you to view it as a luxury or something that was invented by people that have all this free time available. For our people, making has never been a luxury. It has been survival. It has been our form of resistance. It has been how we have kept ourselves human under conditions that were designed to strip us of our humanity. Think about the quilts. Our foremothers took scraps of paper or scraps of material that was left to them, and it was worn out and discarded, and they made something beautiful and warm out of something that was never meant to be enough. And more than that, in some tellings, the quilts actually carried maps. They were usable. The patterns that were stitched into these cloths could basically tell a person which way was north, which house was safe, when they had made it, and when it was time to go. Making as a matter of freedom is something that I often think we lose. Beauty and coded survival was in all the stitching of these quilts that they made. It tells me that creativity is a luxury after that. That is what this is being told to us in this time. I want you to understand that it's not. Creativity is not a luxury. Creativity is our birthright. Think about the spirituals. People who were forbidden from reading, they could not gather freely. They were told that they couldn't make music and all these different things that they were forbidden to do. But yet that music, it carried everything. It carried their grief. It carried their hope. It carried their theology. And again, it sometimes carried coded instructions and directions for their way to freedom. We sang our way through what should have broken us as a people. And we made something so beautiful out of so much pain that the world still sings it today. That is a people that showed that making meaning out of anguish is probably the oldest creative act and sense of rebellion that there is. Think about our hair, turning it into art, into a code, braided patterns that were beautiful and part of our identity. In some histories, again, maps and messages were even hidden in plain sight. Think about the cooking, the daily creation of something, nourishing out of the humble, the leftover, the art, that form that was practiced 3 times a day and rarely called art. Think about our storytelling. That's an art form. The way our elders kept the whole memory of a people alive with nothing but their voice, their rhythm, and a room full of people that were willing to listen. In many West African traditions, this keeper of the story had a name and they had a sacred office, the griot, the one who held the history, the genealogy, the music, the memory of an entire community, and carried it forward so that a people would not forget who they were. The griot was not a hobbyist. They were essential. They were a living library and a keeper of identity. And if we look across all West African cultures, you'll find the same reverence for the maker, for the one who works with textiles, canvas, shapes cloth and ornament that carries a people's meaning. The maker held a sacred role because a people is held together by the beautiful things it makes and the stories that it's able to tell about itself. They knew that creativity was never just decoration. It was the very thread, the community that was woven from it. So when I invite you or say make something, understand what I'm actually inviting you to do is inviting you back into what we used to do. It's not a hobby. It's actually our lineage, our inheritance. You come from a people who made beauty under conditions that were designed to strip it of it. You come from quilters and singers and braiders and cooks and storytellers and griots, from people who insisted on making meaning even when the world gave them every reason to stop. Your impulse to make it not frivolous, it is ancestral. It is one of the deepest forms of survival your people ever practiced: the refusal to let the world make you forget that you are a creative at your nature. If we're going to connect this to a chapter in the book, this will be the chapter that I call the garden. And I choose that image on purpose because I want you to remember how a creative life actually grows. It doesn't happen instantly. It's not in a single burst or inspiration. A garden is planted and tended to and watered and waited on through seasons of time where there's nothing that seems to be happening at all. Our people did not make all of that beauty in one day. It was generations of tending, of planting what they would not live to harvest. What they did was keeping the practice alive by handing it down. Your creativity is a garden too. You do not have to bloom this afternoon. All you need to do is plant, continue to tend to it, make sure you return, and slowly in your own season, a creative life will grow up around you, and it will happen one honest thing at a time. So we're going to take a break for the last time for this episode. And when we come back, we're going to get into the practice and the ayapause for this show. And then we're going to close out. We will be back in just a second. So let's get into our ayapause for this episode. Let's talk about what to actually do, because I never want to leave you with these lofty ideas and no way to actually personify and live this out. The foundation is always on this show is always going to be the ayapause. And I want to show you how it changes the whole act of making things. Most of us, when we finally do sit down to create, we sit down to perform. So we're already bracing ourselves, we're already measuring, we're already asking whether or not this will be good, whether it will sell, whether it's worth our time. The ayapause is how we arrive to this differently. It's how we can come to the making to be present instead of to perform. If you're new here, here's how we take one. Wherever you are, put your feet flat on the floor, hand on your chest, one on your belly. Breathe in for a count of 4 and out for a count of 6. You let the exhale run a little longer than the inhale because that is the breath that tells your nervous system that it's safe for it to calm down. On that first breath, we always want you to notice where you are. You'll do it again a second time, and on that second breath, the body is paying attention to what it is doing. And then on the third, you let one true thing rise up in you, whatever it actually is. 3 breaths and a return to what is true. And before you make anything this week, I want you to take one of these ayapauses so that you arrive at your blank page or space as yourself and not as a performer who's waiting for whatever you create to be judged. Now, on top of that foundation, I want to give you 2 practices for this week. This is just 2 things that I think will keep it simple. First, I call making one honest thing. This week, you're going to make exactly one thing with no audience, no purpose. No one is going to see it. It does not have to be good. And here's the part that I really want you to hear that's important. You have my full and explicit permission to make bad art. In fact, I'm asking you to. Write that clumsy poem, sing that song with your voice off key and shaking in your car. Cook something without a recipe that you don't know how it's going to come out. Whatever calls you in that moment, make it badly on purpose for no one. Think of it as your compost pile. The garden needs the compost, and nothing beautiful you will ever make exists without a hidden mound of clumsy first attempts underneath it. So make one thing this week that gets to be bad and let it feed the ground that you are standing on. The second practice is the one whose gift became a job, and I call it reclaiming the gift. If there's a thing that you used to love that you have monetized so that the joy has left it, whether it's the writing, the baking, the singing, whatever it was, I want you to do that thing one time this week purely for yourself. No clients involved, no invoices, don't post it. Make one thing in your old medium that you will never share, you will never sell, just to remind your own body what it felt like before the joy turned into labor. And then, if you're able, commit to 10 minutes a day of making the way you would water a plant. Not to become great, just 10 honest minutes daily to keep your garden alive. Those 10 minutes a day will do more than any grand plan that you are able to put together. And it's been waiting on this time to come back to itself. Do you hear how these things kind of fit together? Making one honest thing tends your garden, the slow daily planting of a creative life that grows one clumsy attempt at a time. It also protects your voice, right? Letting your own inner sound come out again without a market for people to listen to it. And it invites the bloom. It invites the fullest self coming of yourself in color, not for anyone's approval, but because you are alive and blooming is what the living do. This is not about competing with the machine. It's about being changed by what you make. So before I let you go, I want to ask you one question, and I don't want you to answer it quickly. I do want you to let it sit. Maybe while you make your one honest thing this week, what would you make if you knew no one would ever see it? Notice what rises in you, because whatever came up just now quietly before you talk yourself out of it, that is the thing that you need to be doing. That is your own voice. It's still in there. It still knows exactly what it wants to make. It didn't leave. It just got quiet under all of the reasons not to. To the one who stopped making, I want you to know you are seen. You're not lazy. You did not lose the gift. Life got loud and making got pushed out as not important, and it's allowed to come back slowly. One small honest thing at a time. You can start this week. You can start badly. You can start today. To the one who was told you weren't creative, I want you to know I see you too, and I want you to hear this. That's never true. Creativity is not a club that you failed to get into. It absolutely is your birthright. I will say it's standard equipment. It's the base model. It's the same impulse that made our forefathers and ancestors quilt and sing and braid and cook and do all the things that they did. You are creative because you are human. And because of who you come from, it is part of your DNA. You may simply have never been given permission or a quiet enough room or a low enough bar for you to feel like you could begin. So to the one whose gift became a job, I want you to see this, and that I see you most tenderly of all. You did not do anything wrong by earning from your gift, but you are allowed to take a piece of it back. You are allowed to make one thing that is only yours, that no one will ever pay for or see, just to remember why you loved it in the first place. Reclaim a corner of your gift. Let a little of the joy come home. Here's what I want you to take with you this week. 1, making is not a career or performance. It's a healing practice. And its value is the transformation of the maker, not the market. 2, your creativity is your own voice made audible. So when you stop making something in your presence or in that moment, your voice goes quiet, and that was never meant to be the case. 3, a machine can generate an output, but it cannot have the experience of making. And the experience is the whole thing that heals you. No one can automate your becoming. 4, understand that creativity is your inheritance, an ancestral form of survival and resistance. From the quilts to the spirituals to the griot who kept a people's story alive, this is important. 5, I want you to take the eye of pause for this week to arrive. Make one honest thing this week with no audience, no purpose, and give yourself full permission to make it badly. You do not have to do this alone. Remember that the Substack companion for this episode is live now. Our paid subscribers have a full guided making practice this week. It's a way to arrive at the page, make a one small honest thing without performing. And just know that the circle, the Aya circle, is also open if you want to do this work alongside other people who are learning to make everything again too. Everything is linked in the show notes. If this episode met you somewhere, share it with one person who used to make things and somewhere along the way they've stopped. Sometimes the most healing thing that we can do is hand each other permission to begin again, to begin badly, but simply for the joy of it. So make sure you subscribe, leave that one honest sentence as a review, because that's how this work keeps finding the people who are going to need it. And next week on episode 39, our second to last of this season, we are going to talk about healing without perfection, about letting go of the performance of wellness, the pressure to be the most healed person in the room, to have all the practices and all the insight and never fall apart. After all this talk of making bad art on purpose, we are going to give ourselves permission to heal imperfectly too. And I think this is important, and I want to see you with that one. So until then, I want you to breathe slow, take your eye a pause, make one honest thing this week, just one, badly for no one, because you are alive and making is what the living do. Your voice is still there, and it always has been. I'm Dr. Malaika. This is IOA, and I will see you next Tuesday.